Hello, I'm Rod Garvin, SVP of Talent Insights for the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. I also serve as Executive Director for the Charlotte Alliance Foundation. The Alliance has been working hard to provide timely, relevant content in the midst of this COVID-19 challenge. We hope you have enjoyed the Daily Digest and the social media, all the information that we've been sharing over the past few weeks. The Talent Insights team in particular has really been trying to understand how education and workforce delivery is being impacted. We recently did a survey of our colleges and universities to better understand the shift to online learning and implications for the future. We're also going to be paying close attention to how our employers are hiring, our talent supply and demand. What does that look like in the present and the future? But today I'm really excited about our conversation with Kenny Colbert, President and CEO of the Employers Association. This is the first video interview I've ever done for the Charlotte Alliance, so I'm excited and glad to have Kenny. The Employers Association serves businesses of all sizes, and we actually share many investors and businesses in common. So Kenny, as we get started, really want to learn a little bit about you, and then talk about the work of the Employers Association, and then we'll cover a few more topics as well.
Well, very quickly, my background, I'm probably one of the few people that you will meet. I have spent my entire 40-year career in the human resources field. I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill with a business major and went to work for the now defunct Burlington Industries, which was the largest textile company in the world at that point. Spent 6 years with them in human resources. Then I left and joined a major food manufacturer, and I spent 12 years with them in human resources. And I've been at the Employers Association for 26 years now.
Wow, very, very distinguished career and a lot of experience. How are you leveraging your experience and your talents now? What would you say is the real mission and focus of the Employers Alliance?
Well, our main focus, we're set up as an employers association, which happens to be our name, but there are a lot of employers associations around the country. We've got about 920 member companies, and they range in size from little mom and pops with a handful of employees up to multi-billion-dollar corporations with thousands of companies. Our main services are primarily supervisory, leadership, management, development training, how to be better leaders. We also do very extensive benefits work, flexible spending accounts, HSAs, HRAs, COBRA, et cetera. Very extensive wage and salary surveys. And we share surveys with the Alliance, with a lot of the economic developers in the area. So people come to us for pay data and for benefits data. And the last thing, we've got lots of other services, but the last one I will mention, which has been vitally important in the last few weeks, is we have an advice line. So our members call us on questions, help me with this issue. And it's anything from unemployment, workers' compensation, help me terminate this person. But obviously in the last 3 weeks, coronavirus has been the number one phone call or email.
That's good to hear. And, we've had an opportunity to see a lot of the research and the data that you produce. Obviously, we're a very data-driven economic development organization. I think there's opportunities for even greater collaboration between our organizations as we seek to understand the economic impact, how employers are being impacted. I'm curious to hear, just based on the past few weeks, what are you hearing from your members in terms of the economic impacts of COVID-19? We know it's challenging for all businesses, but what are you hearing from your members in particular?
Well, Rod, we've heard a lot. Just to give you some numbers, in the last 3 weeks, we have received approximately 600 phone calls or emails from approximately 300 of our 920 member companies. I think the number one call or conversation has been related to either layoffs or furloughs. And how do I go about doing that? You know, a lot of the companies are just eliminating complete departments. And while it's a tough decision, it's a pretty easy decision because everybody leaves. Where the tougher decisions are, if you've got, say, 10 people in one job category and you need to eliminate 5 of them, how do you pick those 5 people? So that's been a very popular phone call. Regretfully, another phone call that we've got a lot is about reducing salaries. Do you do it across the board? Do you pick and choose, et cetera? What kind of notifications do you have to give related to that? And then here in the last week or so, the 2 big pieces of legislation, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and now the CARES Act. We've just been absolutely swamped with phone calls, especially about the Families First Act and how that applies, because again, that applies to, you know, any company under 500 employees. And if you think about it, a lot of these companies that are our members and they're your members, they're small companies, 10, 12, 15, 20 employees. They don't have any HR staff there. So how do they interpret these laws? They're coming to us and they're coming to you for those types of questions and answers.
Well, you painted some numbers that really capture the adversity. I mean, that hits close to home. You know, when you talk about, you know, companies that are having to eliminate, you know, entire departments, reducing salaries. I wanted to ask you about that in particular because, I've seen some articles and literature in regards to, you know, cutting staff, furloughing staff versus reducing salary. What are your thoughts on that? Do you do any coaching around trying to encourage companies to reduce salaries before letting employees go, or how do you approach those type of issues?
Well, we talk about that, and it's a very tough decision because if you reduce salaries of everybody that's there and you don't have any layoffs, obviously you're going to have some morale problems because a lot of people right now are just struggling in their personal lives and another thing, and then they take an across the board pay cut. But likewise, if you keep everybody's salary whole and you eliminate X amount of jobs in the workplace, everybody who remains is saying, well, am I going to be next? So it's a no-win situation from a morale standpoint. And what a lot of companies we're hearing, they're kind of combining both. They're doing smaller pay cuts and smaller layoffs so that in essence, it's kind of spread out across the organization. But
That's really interesting. It almost has to be a customized approach. You've got to look at it on a case by case basis and really see what makes sense for the business, you know, based on the market and the industry. That's great perspective. You referenced the CARES Act previously and wanted to get your perspective on that. I understand the SBA and the Federal Reserve have lending programs to help businesses try to retain more employees if possible. What in particular can you share about that? What advice are you giving to your members on that part of the CARES Act?
Well, let's talk 2 things. Let's talk the Families First Act and the CARES Act. And I kind of make reference back to 2010 when the Affordable Care Act came in, or Obamacare. You know, Obamacare was talked about for several months, and finally it was unveiled. And lo and behold, the starting point of it, some of the initiatives started within a few months, and some of it was out 2 or 3 years before it fully kicked in. But if you look at the Families First Act and you look at the CARES Act, these laws were written in about a week's period of time. They came into effect immediately. Both of these laws had a lot of loopholes that weren't fully explained. So that's one reason we've been flooded with questions, but there's just a lot of frustration right now on the part of employers, especially with the CARES Act, because they are applying for loans, but these banks weren't prepared for this. I mean, they had in essence a 48-hour notice to loan billions of dollars out there. So between the backlog of phone calls, the lack of knowledge of how the process actually works, it's been very, very frustrating. Hopefully, though, it's going to work out for the best in the long run. What we're hearing from our member companies are two things. Number one, frustrating part of applying for the loan. And number two, there are so many people applying. Is there going to be any money left for them? You know, how, is this billions of dollars? Do we need to do another stimulus package somewhere along the way to make sure everybody's covered?
It sounds like the current legislation that's been put forth is a great first step, but more most likely will be needed. There's some process challenges and some coordination that has to take place between our government at the federal and state level, as well as the private banks and lending institutions. This is going to be a laboratory. You know, we're going to have to figure this out as we go, it sounds like. Another aspect that I wanted to ask you about is in regards to unemployment insurance and the expansion of certain classes of workers who are covered. Traditionally, unemployment insurance has primarily just been for people who previously worked full-time. Now we're looking at part-time, contract workers, freelancers, those who are part of the gig economy. I'm curious about how that's impacting the current situation, especially for individuals, and whether you think that may be the beginning of expanding and redefining unemployment insurance as we move forward.
Sure. Well, a couple of points about this. As far as the CARES Act goes with us, that's probably been the number one conversation, not so much the loan part of it, but the expanded unemployment part of that people are going to be able to get $600 a week in unemployment benefits from the federal government. So if you are drawing a check from the state of North Carolina, even if it's only maybe a $20 unemployment check, you're going to get a $600 federal check on top of that. And that runs through the end of July. So there's a great deal of excitement about that. The other things that have worked out very well is, you know, there's no longer a 1 week waiting period to draw unemployment. Governor Cooper has signed a decree that in essence said, while you're receiving unemployment, you don't have to look for another job. So that's very optimistic that hopefully in a few weeks, some of these businesses will be trying to bring their employees back to work. And so they've been drawing some unemployment and they will remain loyal to that employer and not go find a job somewhere else. Because let's face it, even though there are a lot of companies that are laying off, you read in the paper, Amazon's trying to hire 100,000 people right now. So it may not be a job to your liking, but if you look hard enough, you may be able to find a job out there. So I think hopefully this unemployment is going to create some loyalty to your organization. Another thing that's very excited about what's happening is the expansion of the number of weeks. North Carolina has a very rigid unemployment system, and the most you can draw is 12 weeks of unemployment. Federal government's going to extend that out 13 weeks. So now in North Carolina, you can draw 25 weeks of unemployment. So that's very, very good news. But as you said, here's something that's brand new that people who are working part-time, gig employers, et cetera, employees are going to be able to draw unemployment. I mean, in my 40-year career, I've never heard of that happening. But I guess it shows two things. That number one, the federal government is trying to work with everybody. And number two, that the federal government recognizes that our economy has changed. You know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you didn't hear of gig workers. And now it's the way of the future. So what's going to happen? You know, I really don't know, but I think the next 9 months are probably going to be the biggest workplace experiment that we've had in our generation. Think about this. People working from home. Most companies allowed a few people to work from home, but it was kind of the exception rather than the rule. I think, you know, when this is over behind us in a few more months, you're going to see more and more people working from home on a regular basis. So that's going to change. You've got a lot of people that are drawing income now through either unemployment or through the Families First Act, so they're getting federal government paid leave. It's going to be hard to take that away. So I think you're going to see a lot of initiatives in Congress in a few months about expanding paid leave to all employees. Now, whether it's going to pass or not, because just face it, we're running up trillions of dollars in debt right now. But in essence, I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. I think the last conversation that's going to be very interesting is the single payer healthcare system. I think a lot of people are going to be comparing. So what's going on in Europe right now, because they're having the same medical problems that we are. Are the people in Europe getting better, faster, quicker medical attention than what we are right now? So I think this is going to be a great experiment to see what's going to happen with socialized medicine. So the next 9 months are going to be probably the biggest workplace experiment that we've seen in at least a generation.
You touched on a number of important issues, Kenny. A lot of issues that we've been exploring, we've now been forced to put into practice.
Exactly.
And you covered that very well, how we're thinking about unemployment, insurance, paid leave, work practices. I've long been a fan of remote working and worker flexibility and freedom. Never wanted it to be under these conditions, but perhaps one positive is, workers and individuals do have more flexibility and freedom, and perhaps more protections, more of a safety net when it comes to economic disruptions that are beyond everyone's control. Kenny, you're a wealth of knowledge. I think we could talk for a long time, and I definitely want to continue this conversation offline and perhaps in another video in the future. But wanted to give you an opportunity to, share any final words or thoughts, especially to those businesses who are struggling during this time, as well as employees that are under tremendous stress, whether they're still working or not working. I think we're all feeling the impact of what's happening right now on a psychological level as well as on a financial level.
Yeah, this is uncharted territory. You've heard that expression just hundreds of times here. Business owners are having to get very creative to see anything that they can do just to stay afloat. I feel so bad for these smaller companies, again, the mom and pops with 10, 20, 30 employees, et cetera. Because quite honestly, some of them are not going to be able to come back, or they're going to come back in a completely different format from what they are right now. But it's causing companies to be very, very creative in their financing. And fortunately, the federal government and the state governments have stepped up to help. I heard last night that the county may be willing to kick in some money as well. So there may be some loans available through Mecklenburg County. And I think that's going to be debated tonight. So this is a key time that all of the sources, the local government, federal government, state governments, we all need to work together with businesses to see if we can't keep everybody afloat. And as I just said, I think when we emerge from this in another 6 or 9 months, and we can look back behind us, the workplace is going to look completely different in 2021 than it did in 2020. And our hand was forced by some degree, but I actually think we're going to come out much better. I'm very optimistic.
I'm right there with you. I think if we don't find a way to create a better economy, community, and society, then we will have missed the opportunity that was in this inherent crisis. So we're right there on the same page. Thanks a lot, Kenny. Appreciate the work that you and the Employers Association are doing. Take care, and I hope to see you in person at some point in the not too distant future. Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. And I'll close by saying, if we can help you at the Employers Association, to any of the listeners out there, don't hesitate to call us. We're setting up a provisional membership through the end of June for people who just need maybe advice on how to handle these issues. We're setting up a special deal with them. You can contact Sarah Kenyon at the Employers Association, and she can walk you through that. But we're here to help if we can.
Thank you so much.